This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today is Friday. It's November 3rd, 2023. Thank you for joining us on The Truth Central. We're doing podcasts every weekday. First story today is a troubling one. Russia's Wagner group has announced that it plans to send air defenses to Hezbollah. Hezbollah, of course, is the radical terrorist group in Lebanon. And the Russia is going to send these air defense systems to Hezbollah, indicates that the war may be preparing to go regional, with Hezbollah to the north of Israel, possibly ready to attack Israel from the north, creating a two-front war. Now, the Wagner group, as people know who followed this, have their head of the Wagner group did an incursion into Russia with the Wagner troops. The Wagner group's a paramilitary force that was private and had worked alongside the Russian army. And this was a direct affront to Putin. Of course, the head of the Wagner group then died in a plane crash shortly afterwards, not coincidentally, but at any rate, the Wagner group has now largely been taken over by the Russian troops. And it becomes now pretty much of an active arm of the Russian army. The Wagner troops have played an important role in Syria, where they have shored up the country's leader, who's President Bashar al-Assad, who's an ally of Putin. Now, what this means is, again, that there's with Hezbollah, which is an Iranian-backed militia, opening up possibly a northern front against Israel. We have the U.S. with an aircraft carrier in the eastern Mediterranean ready to deter Hezbollah and Iran. But with air defenses coming to Hezbollah, that is a threat to our air power from the aircraft carrier in the eastern Mediterranean. Now, Hassan Nasrallah, who is the head of Hezbollah, is giving a speech today. Friday is typically the Holy Prayer Day in the Muslim world. And I guess we'll find out whether, from that speech, whether or not there is going to be a second front opened. But what is also important to note about this story is that Russia now is joining forces with Iran much more closely and supporting Iran with both Hezbollah and Hamas. Russia had turned to Iran when the sanctions we'd imposed upon Russia blocked Russia from getting certain of its military supplies and other armaments from Western sources, or utilizing its traditional supply chain routes, blocked by our putting on these sanctions because Russia invaded Ukraine. So Russia went to Iran, began using Iran drones, which they are now manufacturing with a plant that Iran and Russia have opened in Russia. So we're getting a new axis of evil here, and China's in the wings also spurring on Hamas and Hezbollah against the United States. We've been warning for some time that this is a bloc that's forming, and I see the potential here with this story of the war expanding in Israel to a second front, with Syria on the fringe. Maybe a third front could be opened. This is going to be an expanding war. I don't see it contracting. All right, now at the same time, the next story, these are all being reported widely today. New York Times, Washington Post are on these stories. Ukraine's commander finally came out and told the truth, which is pretty remarkable for Ukraine. But the top commander, whose name is Zaluzhny, Zaluzhny, said the war's at a stalemate. Now, we've been saying this for months, and I've been saying that Russia's going to win this war. Of course, the narrative was coming out of the American left, was a neo-Marxist narrative, was anybody who dared tell the truth about Ukraine was considered a Putin sympathizer. Well, the truth is the stalemate has happened. And what this general is saying is that there's no beautiful breakthrough happening with the offensive that was this big spring-summer offensive. Remember all the hype about the spring-summer offensive and how the Ukraine needed all these weapons, and we put billions of dollars in that I'm sure a lot of it was stolen. Ukraine's the most corrupt country, I think, in the world. Maybe, well, I think the Biden administration is rivaling it. We're becoming maybe rivals in corruption, which is a desperate story that I hate having to acknowledge, but I think it's true. It seems to me the Congress must be on the take as well. I've been criticizing Mitch McConnell for months, even at the Heritage Foundation. I'll probably never be invited back to the Heritage Foundation when I was presenting my book, The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change, in a panel with Mark Morano. I commented that the U.S. Congress is compromised. Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, Chinese, worth millions in China. And of course, that family would not be alive if Mitch McConnell wasn't doing what China wanted done. And Mitch McConnell now is almost an ally of Chuck Schumer in the Senate. We don't seem to have, the GOP is clearly Democrat light. It's all a uniparty. And I even see reports that these GOP presidential primary debates are worthless. Nobody's watching them. They're talking about compromising them. I haven't seen a single moment of them. I couldn't care less. And Pence has dropped out of the race. He got less, I think, than 1% support. Now, what the Ukraine commander is saying is that his forces are in this stalemate. It's like World War I. We've reached the level where the technologies put us in a stalemate. And he wants to represent it as if the Russians are incapable of advancing and he's incapable of advancing because it's like trench warfare. Well, I don't think yet this is accurate. What this general said was that modern technology and precision weapons on both sides are preventing the troops from breaching enemy lines, including the expansive use of drones, the ability to jam drones, the ability to jam communications. Now, let's get realistic about this. Russia has an edge on the technological battlefield, a clear edge. And Russia can jam the Ukrainian forces such that the Ukrainian forces going into battle are completely ineffective because they can't coordinate, can't communicate. Russia's got a sophisticated GPS guided weapons. Russia has a superior battlefield technology. Today's modern battlefield is going to be more like a video game than a typical traditional warfare battlefield. So Ukraine is, I think, in a position where they are losing. And Russia has held its defensive position, and Russia would be poised, if they want to do military expansion of the areas they've already secured. I suspect Russia would only expand on the Black Sea, although depending upon whether or not the West comes to its senses and gets to a negotiating position, Russia may make a move on Kiev through the winter. These are pivotal issues because Kiev is the capital of Ukraine. If Russia moves on Kiev, it's a different nature of the war. So far, Russia's occupied the Donbass, which is in eastern Ukraine, and down in the south by the Black Sea, although it has not taken over all the ports. Odessa is still in control of the Ukraine. Russia could move on Odessa and have complete control over the Black Sea. This war is losing favor because I think people are catching on that this is a war that the United States has largely caused. And George Soros, the American left, the State Department, Hillary Clinton began in 2013 taking money from oligarchs. Pinochet was the one who was mostly supplying her money to her Clinton Foundation. Hillary was running a racket when she was Secretary of State. They had the Clinton Foundation was taking money from all kinds of oligarchs who wanted political favors from the State Department. They were buying those by contributing to the Clinton Foundation. I reported on this in a book called Partners in Crime, which I wrote trying to expose this about 2015. And then we did the Maidan Rebellion, in which the State Department and Soros engineered the overthrow of a Russian-supported president of Ukraine, legitimately elected, Yanukovych, and Ukraine has been unstable ever since. Russia has tried to stabilize, try to keep Ukraine out of NATO, but again, the State Department, if you remember the impeachment hearings of when President Trump had the call with Zelensky and he mentioned Biden's corruption and Burisma, the Democrats jumped on that and they wanted to impeach him. Wasn't supposed to go after his political opponent. Of course, it's okay for the State Department to overthrow Yanukovych, set the path for Biden to go in there with massive corruption. It's okay for the Department of Justice to be prosecuting Trump and the New York State Attorney General. Every time Trump turns around, he's got another indictment. That's okay. The double standard of justice in the United States is intolerable, and it's growing. I think it's going to become increasingly a problem for the Democratic Party, and the corruption in Russia and the United States has got to stop. We're spending billions and billions of dollars every day, and increasing that every day. We'll have $1.5 trillion of debt issued by the Treasury in the fourth quarter of this year. That we're in the fourth quarter now. That'd be, the last 3 months, October, November, December, the first 3 months of next year, first quarter of next year, $1.5 trillion of new Treasury debt. That's an unprecedented amount. Well, it will certainly push our national debt over $34 trillion, which means we've got interest payments of $1 trillion. When we can't make the interest payments without printing more money, eventually our currency becomes worthless. Already bond rates are up to 5%. We're having to pay a lot more to get bond debt, and that impacts the Treasury. It's more expensive money to get because we are going so deeply in debt. All right, now with the Ukraine war, it's stalemate, and I think Congress, especially Johnson and the new Speaker of the House and the conservative Democrats, Republicans in the House, which are not very many, about 30, maybe 30, they're getting an impact. I think the United States people are waking up to the squeeze on the middle class that's going on. Now, with these wars going on, I think we've got the formula here for a perfect storm, massive downturn. We're going to see oil increase. I think the World Bank says it could go as high as $147 or $157 a barrel. I think it could go higher. I think oil could hit $200 a barrel. It depends on what happens. This is very much like what we saw going on in 1973. Oil's right now at $83 a barrel. And gold is just under 2,000. Gold was over 2,000 last weekend. Again, they suppressed the price of gold, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it for long. Gold today is right now trading at $1,994 an ounce. And I think this is likely to go over 2,000 over the weekend. Gold is pushing the $2,000 limit. And by the way, there's a story out about the massive amount of gold buying that's going on by the central banks. Globally, central banks added a net 337 tons of gold in the third quarter this year, the second highest third quarter total on record behind 2022 last year. Through the first 9 months of this year, central banks bought a net of 800 tons of gold. That's 14% more than through the same period in 2022. The Bank of China is leading the way, adding another 78 tons of gold to its hearing. Why are the central banks adding gold? Because they see the currencies could collapse and gold will retain its value. The currencies, which are dramatically inflated by deficit spending around the world, are positioned with a bubble, a debt bubble that's going to burst. And the central banks don't want to be without gold, so they have the ability to reconstruct some kind of a currency that will be viable. What's happening is that all these fiat currencies are not worth the paper they're printed on. And by the way, they aren't even printed on paper anymore. They're just hypothecated with numbers in a computer. All our money today just exists as money in a computer. The money that's actually printed the central banks would like to get rid of, because they would want to get rid of anything except digital currency. It's another move towards totalitarianism, which the globalists are trying to push down our throats every time they turn around. When the global crash occurs, please get a copy of this free book. And Chris will show it to you and put the number on the screen. The book is and do talk to Swiss America. This is a book I published with Swiss America. The book is The Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. Get a free copy by talking to Swiss America, 1-800-519-6268. That number again, 1-800-519-6268. Get a copy of the free book. Global Crash is going to create a historic gold rush. Gold jumped in price in 1980 when Reagan took over, because Jimmy Carter had such a disastrous presidency with stagflation, and we're repeating that. 1973, there was the Yom Kippur War in Israel, followed by an Arab oil embargo. Gold went to $843 an ounce. Then we're having a repeat of that right now. We've got another Israeli war. We've got the OPEC nations joining with the BRIC nations and cutting production in order to boost the price of oil. With this kind of a war, the oil production and flow is going to be disrupted, and oil is going to go over $100 a barrel almost certainly. Then we had the 2008-2009 collapse of the subprime market in real estate, and gold went to $1,426 an ounce. We're doing that again. We're having housing bubbles, which are bursting, with interest rates, 30-year fixed mortgage at 8%. We're seeing foreclosures already in the auto market, where the subprime auto market is going delinquent at a higher percentage, perhaps, than ever. And the commercial real estate is also in trouble. When it gets to be refinanced in 2024, commercial buildings are going to be worth a lot more than they were to build them. And you're going to find that's going to impact severely their value, which means that a lot of losses are going to be taken in the commercial real estate market. I think a lot of banks today are on the edge. They're still booking good loans, which they know are not at the value where they're booking them. And again, if they have to start marking down their bonds their treasury bonds bought at zero coupon or near it, which are really not worth in their par value, they have to be reduced in value. And you've got the same thing going on with loans in real estate and homes and commercial real estate, office buildings, which are I think are going to go through the kind of crash we went through in 2008 and 2009. This economy is poised for a very, very bad recession. Chris, would you like to comment at this point?
Funny thing, the Secret War on Cash, the Swiss America podcast, is talking about this as well. They were discussing how gold, one commodities expert is saying gold could hit as high as $3,000. That's one guy. But the point is, in this kind of environment, gold and metals tend to go upward anyway. They talk about this. They talk about how the central banks are buying gold. It's going to be, if you haven't heard it yet, it's a very interesting podcast. You can hear that podcast also right here. That's right here on The Truth Central. So if you want to just go to the website, thetruthcentral.com, and you can find all of Dr. Corsi's old podcasts and the current ones as well. You can also find in this corner here, the Truth Central podcast audio-wise. You can find the video podcast, and of course the audio podcasts are Secret War on Cash from Swiss America. They also have the video podcast. We put them up here as well. You'll find those on the front page.
Thank you, Chris. Now, this Democratic money launderer, Sam Bankman-Fried, was convicted on all charges yesterday. This is a guy who FTX was an exchange. He had managed it so that he was diverting money to, of course, his lifestyle. He was jets and luxury this, luxury that, and hobnobbing it with the glitterati of the world. And at the same time, he was bilking billions of dollars out of this cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, and funding it. He largely funded a lot of the Democratic primaries and the Democratic congressional races in 2022. They say the disgraced crypto mogul was the largest political donors of the 2022 midterm election cycle. He funneled $38 million to Protect Our Future PAC, which was dedicated to electing Democrats in House races. And of course, he was the darling of the Democrats when he was doing this, and it was all a scam, very much a Ponzi scam, where he's taking money and putting it on, taking money from this group and using it for that group. And eventually he ran out of groups to steal from. So he'll be in prison for a long time. And here you see the mayor in New York, I guess Abrams, is under investigation for taking money in his campaign from Turkey. Evidently, the FBI was investigating that in New York yesterday. There's stories out about that as well. We'll see if anything comes of that. The Democrats usually get away with everything, although they may throw one Democrat to the wolves to the FBI to say, "Oh, we're not really only for the woke left," which is nonsense. That's what they are. A couple more stories I think that are disturbing in terms of the economic impact. These Democratic sanctuary cities, finally, the Democratic mayors, this is pathetic. I mean, it'd be laughable if it wasn't so serious. But the Democratic mayors now from Chicago, Denver, Houston, Los Angeles, and New York. Okay, and pretty soon it'll be San Francisco and Philadelphia and Baltimore, and just name all these Democratic-run cities. The Democratic cities are getting dominated by minorities, and they elect Democrats, and the cities now are going to go bankrupt. What they're complaining about here is they've been swamped with hundreds of thousands of migrants, who've been bussed in from the southern border. Evidently, they're also flying them on airplanes. A lot of the stories are coming out that the airplanes coming out of Tucson are filled with the new migrants. I'm in favor of migration. I think the Hispanic migration may be ultimately the survival of this nation because the Hispanics want to work. They're not woke. They believe in Jesus Christ and they have religion and they want to build families. Americans are completely woke. We're now got generations trained not to have families, to think about LGBT as normal, and to worry about their gender identity while attacking masculinity. So what these mayors are begging is they're saying they are going broke with the migrants who are sleeping in the streets in their cities or packed into the hotels where the migrants now have the gangs controlling the hotels and the sidewalks around the hotel. The cities are getting dangerous, more dangerous every day. So the AP News got a letter from the Denver mayor, Mike Johnson, who is leading the coalition of mayors. The letter states, we believe additional action is necessary, and believe as the mayors leading many of our most affected cities, we can be helpful partners in identifying solutions. That's a laugh. To address this crisis without further delay, we're requesting an urgent meeting with you. So I guess written to President Biden, to address ways we can work with your administration to avoid large numbers of additional asylum seekers being brought to our cities with little or no coordination, support, or resources. Biden administration is just dumping these migrants into cities and saying, deal with it. They want additional federal funding, of course. They want more money. Everybody wants more money. And the Biden administration may just print it up again and send it to them. They want to now have a collaborative federal approach to coordinated entry. So they want to limit the number of asylum seekers suddenly. Suddenly the Democratic Party is getting concerned that all of these migrants sleeping in the streets. We posted a picture of one of them. I mean, it's pretty amazing how many people are sleeping in the streets in America today. Never in my lifetime did I think this was possible. We've got San Francisco overrun with homelessness. Homelessness, even among the middle class, is growing alarmingly. And the Biden administration does not seem to be able to do anything about it. We're not only in the days, it looks like to me, of World War III beginning. We're in the days of a new depression beginning. And before the stock market crash in 1929, it looked pretty good if you read the newspapers predicting economic success and not understanding or anticipating that a crash was about to come. We're in the same situation today. Also, I'm seeing that homeschooling is in a revolution. It's increasing dramatically. Homeschooling has surged by 51%. The Washington Times, I believe, Washington Post did a study of this, and there's a whole major shift where people are taking their kids out of the schools. So if you see a dip in public school enrollment, which is beginning to occur, about 4 to 7%, and a surge in homeschooling by 51%, why? People just do not want their kids, I think appropriately, taught all this woke nonsense. And again, you're going to find that there'll be a backlash. The school teachers union are going to say, well, these kids are not well educated, et cetera, et cetera. That's also a major impact that parents do not want the government in charge of their children. I'm very much in favor of homeschooling, and I think it should increase. And I'd be happy to see the public schools close because I think that they're only indoctrination centers. They're not teaching kids the fundamental skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic. I believe one of the cities or states passed a law that you can get a diploma without even being able to read. All right, now finally, the globalists are calling for a public health crisis from global warming. They're pushing this theme that climate equals a public health crisis. In other words, there's more illness because the earth is getting warmer. Now, this is actually nonsense. I mean, they're not going to do this they're not going to take the same analysis with regards to the vaccines that were produced for COVID. Instead, they're going to blame the weather. And there's a whole series, if you read the article, there's a whole series of reports coming out. What's behind this? Of course, the World Health Organization wants to take charge of every nation's health systems with the ability to declare an emergency, a health emergency because of climate change. If they can do this, if they get this link established, the idea then is that they will have in place the ability to do a lockdown of any economy they want because we have a climate emergency that's going to produce a health emergency. Even though there's not a health emergency, even though there's not a pandemic, just on the narrative, whether or not it's true, the health organization, the World Health Organization, could have the power to shut down the global economy again. If this goes through with this treaty they want, where they're given the power to preside over world health, and each country loses its national sovereignty. I never imagined we'd get to these points. And I was fighting in 2010, the North American Union, the Security and Prosperity Partnership, that George W. Bush wanted to put unifying the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And I was arguing that was globalism, as the creation of a North American Union. Well, they're even beyond that now. They just want to take over global power with global organizations. And the climate is going to be one of their mechanisms to say we need to have global control by the United Nations or the World Health Organization because climate change is going to destroy us all and make everybody die from illnesses. Nonsense. The reality is that climate policies are collapsing around the world. The German finance minister just cast doubt on whether the 2030 was an accurate date for abandoning coal. We're going to have this COP28 meeting coming up in about 4 months in Dubai, and the European anti-coal coalition is on a collision course with China, which is using all the coal it can get its hands on, while proclaiming that it was still going to be following net zero. It's just that we're not there yet with China. China's even got Fischer-Tropsch plants operating. The largest one in the world operating is in China, which is taking coal and making petroleum products out of it. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott is saying that net zero is impossible. This is Australia by 2050. We reported yesterday the wind turbines there are two major wind turbine plants outside of New Jersey, on the offshore in New Jersey, that are taking a hit because the Dutch company Ørsted pulled out of the projects simply because they couldn't, without the government financing and with the real cost of running these plants, becoming aware of the American public and the economics of it for Ørsted, the electricity is just too expensive. Can't get the parts. They're behind schedule. It's like Solyndra. We've got Solyndra happening all over again in wind and solar. And I think with the world going into the kinds of crises we're going into, are people really going to care about which of 1,759 plus genders you could be when you can't feed your family or pay your mortgage? We're going into a desperate time here. And I do encourage you to get a copy of this free book and to prepare yourself for understanding what the globalists are really up to. Chris, any final comment before we wrap up for today?
I remember us talking about this a while back when Joe Biden tried to sign over power to the World Health Organization. This was going to happen. The idea was to allow, because there were a lot of defiant nations saying, no, forget this idea of vaccinating everybody and masking everybody up. And there were a lot of defiant people within this nation. Some states were going, hey, let's open up earlier. The Agenda 2030 types will have none of that. The World Economic Forum will have nothing of that. They figured, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can guilt people. We can guilt people into saying, well, if you're not going to participate in fixing a world health crisis, then you're a horrible person. That social credit score of yours is going to go down. That's what they're doing. That's why the New World Order types are trying to shout, oh, this is going to be a health crisis. Like you said, the World Health Organization needs to take over, and you need to comply.
The left, the hard left, the neo-Marxist left, it's my new book on the neo-Marxism and the cultural Maoism. The hard left wants power. They're totalitarian. And the right really wants limited government. They constantly say, well, the totalitarians are on the right. Hitler was a socialist, a national socialist. And this new book, I think, is going to do quite well. We're going to try to get more publicity on it. The media are making it very, very difficult to publicize books today. And I'll take some efforts to get the word out about this. The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy is the second volume, my Great Awakening trilogy. The first volume was The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. And Chris, we will put the 800 number there. I want to, one more time, remind people they get this free book on the coming global crash and the historic gold rush that's going to follow. Get a free copy of that book. Call 1-800-519-6268, 1-800-519-6268. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is November 3rd, 2023. In the end, God will always win. We are going to go through the judgment of God. This is end days. I see it clearly now and everything that's happening. Biblical prophecies are being fulfilled, and we are living in biblical times. I think we've always been living in biblical times. But at certain times, the events that occur are fulfilling what's in the Bible. If we head into an apocalypse, we head into the Revelation, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I do not believe that God created the human race to fail, but he will have a massive judgment. The solution is offered to us in the Bible, 2 Chronicles 7:14, where God implores us to get down on our knees and beg for forgiveness. We've taken God out of the schools, out of our hearts. I think millions of Americans are waking up. I think this could be a moment for a great revival in America. People are seeing the horror of cutting babies to pieces in the womb, defenseless babies, before they're born. These are acts against God's law. And God does rule here on heaven as in earth. And God's judgment will be mighty and just. I do believe we'll get through it. And the more of us that join in understanding the importance of restoring God to the United States of America, I think the quicker we'll get through this crisis. And I'm confident, I know God will win in the end. And I'm confident that if we follow 2 Chronicles 7:14, that we will be in accord with God's law. And it's time to get in accord with God's law. Dr. Jerome Corsi, November 3rd, 2023, The Truth Central. Make sure you like it. It'll boost our ratings. Give 5 stars, make comments, do everything you can to get this program more widely heard. We'll be greatly appreciative. We're on a lot of channels, Rumble, BitChute, many different channels. You can see them all in the upper right-hand corner of the website. We are also audio broadcasting, Apple Podcasts. Again, like us, promote us. We are on YouTube for as long as they'll let us stay. And you can see that we have, with the website, we have a lot of different aspects of showing you content. Take a look through the content that we've got on the website. There's the Truth Central with Dr. Jerome Corsi. You can see past broadcasts. You can follow what we're doing. Just explore the website, and we'll be updating the website on a continual basis. Thank you for joining us. We will be the truthcentral.com. We will be back on Monday. We're doing podcasts every weekday. God bless.